It was a normal afternoon, just like any other. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. My two younger brothers, Liam and Ethan, were home alone in their room. My parents had left to run some errands, and I was upstairs, lost in my own world. Little did I know, this peaceful moment would soon turn into something none of us could ever have predicted. I had no idea what was going on in that room, but I felt an unease settle in my stomach, like an invisible force pulling at me. I kept hearing strange noises from downstairs, but I shrugged them off. It wasn't until the sound of glass shattering pierced the silence that I started to worry. I rushed downstairs to find the door to their room slightly ajar, and that's when I noticed something off. Liam and Ethan were standing in the middle of the room, staring at something with wide, terrified eyes. Their faces were pale, their bodies frozen in place, as if they had seen a ghost. I called out to them, but neither of them answered. The only sound was their heavy breathing. Something had happened in that room, something they weren't ready to talk about. I tried to get closer, but both of them backed away, their eyes never leaving whatever they were looking at. It wasn't just their silence that scared me. It was the way they seemed to be avoiding the truth, as if they were trying to protect something or someone. My heart raced as I stood there, unsure of what to do next. What could possibly have happened in that room that left them so shaken? What were they hiding from me? I needed answers, but they weren't ready to share. The mystery was growing, and the tension between us was palpable. As I reached out to comfort them, something caught my eye, a strange, unfamiliar object on the floor. But before I could get a closer look, everything went dark. The room fell silent, and I had no idea what was coming next. What had just happened to my brothers, and why didn't they want to tell me the truth? I shook myself out of the momentary daze. The lights flickered once, then twice, before they finally went out completely. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood there in the dark, only the faint sound of my brother's breathing filling the silence. It was like everything around us had stopped moving, and all I could focus on was the chilling atmosphere that now surrounded us. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, my hands shaking as I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, landing on the floor just in front of me. There, barely visible in the dim light, was the object they'd been staring at. It looked like an old book, its leather cover worn and weathered. But it wasn't the book itself that caught my attention. It was the strange symbols etched across its surface, symbols I had never seen before. Liam and Ethan hadn't moved. They just stood there, like statues, their eyes glued to the object. I approached slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "What is this? What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Neither of them responded. Ethan's eyes were wide, his body tense, as if he was afraid to speak, afraid to even breathe. Liam finally broke the silence, his voice shaking. It's, it's not ours. We didn't touch it. It just appeared. I could barely process what he was saying. How could something like that just appear in their room? And why didn't they want to talk about it? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that something was off. Something about the way they were acting. Something about the look in their eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a book. It was something far darker, something that had put fear into my brothers. And the worst part? I had no idea how deep this thing went, or what it would mean for all of us. The whispers grew louder, their sharp, unintelligible tones gnawing at my sanity. It wasn't just the noise, it was the feeling in the air, thick with something unexplainable, something wrong. My brothers were frozen, caught in the grip of fear, their eyes fixed on the book as if they couldn't look away, like it had control over them. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Neither of them answered. Instead, they stared at the book as if hypnotized, the tension in their bodies tightening with every passing second. I tried to shake Ethan's arm, to snap him out of whatever trance he was in, but he didn't even flinch. I backed away from the book, my heart racing. The room felt suffocating, and my thoughts spun in circles, trying to make sense of what was happening. There had to be an explanation. This couldn't be real, could it? But the strange energy in the room, the way the air felt so wrong, told me otherwise. Something about that book was changing everything. Then the light flickered again, and in that brief moment of darkness, I saw it. A shadow in the corner of the room, taller than anything that should have been there. It wasn't just a trick of the light, it moved. It shifted toward us, slowly, like it was crawling, creeping along the walls, drawing closer. I couldn't make out its shape, but I could feel it. My skin prickled, and every nerve in my body screamed to run. Ethan finally turned to me, his face pale, his lips trembling. It's here. It's real. It's not just a book. It's something else. Something old. Something powerful. His voice cracked, as if even saying it out loud was too much to bear. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely able to speak over the rising panic in my chest. Liam's voice was a whisper, almost lost in the growing storm of whispers around us. "It's been waiting for someone to find it. We, we should never have touched it." I couldn't breathe. The fear in their voices, the terror in their eyes, all of it felt real. I didn't want to believe them, but every part of me screamed that they were right. I glanced back at the book. The symbols on its cover seemed to pulse, like they were alive. They glowed faintly, their edges shimmering, and with each passing second, the shadows in the room grew darker, thicker. The whispers were louder now, surrounding us, pressing in on every side. It was impossible to tell where they were coming from. I looked around desperately, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain it. But all I could focus on was the growing sense of doom. And then, without warning, the book flipped open by itself. The pages rustled violently, as though something inside it was trying to escape. I stepped back, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. The room was alive now, full of energy I couldn't understand, and everything was leading to one inevitable moment. Whatever was going to happen next, I knew we wouldn't be able to stop it. The book continued to rustle as the pages turned on their own, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness of the room. It was as though the house had gone completely quiet, save for the maddening rustling and the whispers that seemed to surround us from every direction. My heart raced, my breath shallow. I had no idea what to do or where to go. My mind was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the book, from whatever dark force was now controlling the room. Ethan was shaking, his hands pressed against his ears as though trying to block out the whispers. But it wasn't just the sound, it was something deeper, something more primal that seemed to seep into our bones. Liam was frozen in place, his mouth agape, staring at the open pages of the book like a man caught in a trance. I took a hesitant step toward them, trying to shake them out of their stupor. "Liam, Ethan, we need to leave, now." But they didn't respond. Instead, Liam slowly lifted his hand toward the book, as though compelled by some invisible force. His eyes were wide, his face pale, but there was something different about the way he moved. It wasn't him anymore, not entirely. His movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet being controlled by strings. His fingers brushed the pages, and as they did, the room seemed to grow colder. A sharp gust of wind blew through the room, though no windows were open, and the shadows in the corners of the room twisted, like they were alive. Then, without warning, a deep, guttural voice echoed through the room. It didn't come from any of us. It came from the book. The voice was low, ancient, and filled with malice. It spoke a single word: release. A jolt of terror shot through me. I felt the room begin to vibrate, the air thickening, pressing against me like a weight I couldn't shake off. I backed away, my hands trembling. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew that this was something far worse than I had imagined. Suddenly, a sharp crack filled the air, and the floor beneath us groaned as if it was about to give way. I looked down in panic to see the floorboards splintering, cracking open in jagged lines. It was like the house itself was coming apart, like the very foundation was breaking under the weight of whatever had been unleashed by that cursed book. But it didn't stop there. As the cracks spread, I saw something move beneath the floor, something dark and twisted, like a shadow trying to break free. I couldn't make out its shape, but it was big, too big, and it was getting closer. The room seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the air growing heavier with every passing second. The whispers turned into a chorus, like voices crying out in agony, their words unintelligible but full of desperation. Ethan screamed, his voice barely audible over the rising chaos. "It's too late. We can't stop it." I turned to him, desperate for answers. "What do you mean? What is happening?" Liam's eyes flickered toward me, his expression blank, and he whispered hoarsely, "It's not just the book. It's a curse that's been passed down for generations. We've opened the door. There's no going back." I felt a chill of horror run through me as I realized what he was saying. This wasn't just a random event. It wasn't an accident. The book had been waiting for someone to open it, waiting for the right moment, and now that it was open, there was no way to close it. We had unknowingly unleashed something ancient, something powerful. And it wasn't just the book we had to fear, it was whatever it had called into this world. As the cracks spread further and the air thickened with an oppressive weight, I knew we were running out of time. Something was coming, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. The floor beneath us groaned again, louder this time, as if the house was protesting, fighting against whatever was trying to break through. The cracks spread wider, and the dark, shadowy figure beneath the floor stirred, growing larger and more menacing. I could feel it now. Something was rising, something that had been waiting in the depths of this house for centuries. "We need to destroy the book," I screamed over the chaos, my voice desperate. "We have to burn it." But Liam, his eyes still glazed and distant, shook his head slowly, as though he could barely comprehend what I was saying. "It's too late. It's already too powerful. If you burn it, it'll just come for you. It will find you, just like it found us." Ethan clutched his brother's arm, his face twisted with fear. "We didn't know," he muttered, almost as if pleading for forgiveness. "We didn't know what we were doing." I felt the weight of their words sink into my chest. We had unknowingly unleashed something ancient and terrifying, something that had been bound by forces far beyond our understanding. But there was no time to dwell on guilt. The floorboards cracked again, and the dark shape below us surged forward, pushing against the floor as though it wanted to break free. My heart pounded in my chest. Then, just as I thought we had no chance left, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the whispers. For a brief moment, everything went still, the world frozen in place. In that silence, I saw it, something I hadn't noticed before. The book was glowing now, its symbols brighter than ever, pulsing with energy. And for the first time, I understood. The book wasn't just a key, it was a trap. Without thinking, I lunged forward, grabbing the book from Liam's trembling hands. As soon as my fingers touched it, a surge of energy coursed through me, sharp, burning, but strangely empowering. I felt the weight of the curse trying to drag me down, but I fought against it, holding the book up high. This is the only way to stop it, I yelled, my voice cracking with the intensity of the moment. With all the strength I could muster, I hurled the book toward the dark figure that was now rising from the cracked floor. Time seemed to stretch as the book flew through the air. The moment it made contact, the room exploded with a blinding light, and the shadows screamed in fury. The house trembled violently, shaking like it was coming apart at the seams. I shielded my eyes, unable to see through the searing light. For a moment, it felt like the world was ending, like the darkness was consuming everything. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the light faded and the room fell silent. The floor was whole again, the cracks gone. The oppressive air lifted and the whispers ceased. I opened my eyes, blinking in disbelief. The book was gone. Whatever had risen from the floor had been banished, its presence vanishing with the finality of a dream fading into the night. But just as I thought it was over, something caught my eye. A small, familiar object lay on the ground, half hidden beneath the fallen furniture. It was a single page from the book, its symbols still glowing faintly. And then, as I reached out to grab it, the whispers returned, soft at first, but growing louder, more insistent. The curse wasn't over, it was only just beginning. I stared at the glowing page in my hand, feeling the weight of its ominous presence. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, but I knew one thing for certain. We had broken the cycle, at least for now. The room had returned to its eerie calm, the oppressive atmosphere lifting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't fully escaped the curse. That page, it was a reminder, a warning. Liam and Ethan stood silently behind me, still shaken, their faces pale with fear. "What now?" Ethan asked, his voice small and filled with uncertainty. "What does it mean?" I didn't have an answer. For the first time, I realized how much I didn't know, how little we had understood about the forces we had disturbed. But one thing was clear: the book might be gone, but its legacy was not. The page I held in my hand pulsed with the same energy that had nearly destroyed us all, a constant reminder that evil, once awakened, didn't just disappear. I glanced at my brothers, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. They weren't the same. The terror they had experienced had left its mark, and I knew they would never forget what we had uncovered. The house seemed quieter now, as though it too had exhaled a long breath, relieved to be rid of the darkness that had haunted it. We never spoke of the book again. We tried to return to normal life, but there was no going back. The whispers had faded, but deep down I knew they weren't truly gone. I kept that page hidden, tucked away, as a reminder of the darkness that could rise again. The house, though peaceful for now, would never feel like home again. And I couldn't help but wonder, how long until the curse returned, stronger than before? In the end, I learned a harsh truth. Some things, once unleashed, can never be put back. And sometimes, the darkest forces are those we never see coming.